Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Gen Politics. So I go on Twitter this morning, and the number one trending thing in the news is AIPAC. Not super surprising, but I wondered why, and it's because of this. Marjorie Taylor Greene posted this morning saying, "I am not funded by AIPAC or any other foreign lobbyist groups. I am also not funded by the military-industrial complex, big pharma, health insurance industry, or any industry. I'm 1,000,000% only working for my district and the American people. Get off the internet, hug your family, and tell them you love them, and enjoy the real world." Now, that's a nice message. Basically, I'm not bought and paid for by anybody, least of all AIPAC and any foreign lobby. And then AIPAC responds to this by saying, "Imagine claiming to be America only while demonizing patriotic Americans. AIPAC is an American organization, funded by Americans, directed by Americans, strengthening an alliance that benefits America, and we won't be deterred by Marjorie Taylor Greene from participating in our democracy." It is not an American organization. It is an Israeli organization. It is a foreign lobby, the only one that doesn't have to register as a foreign lobby, and everyone knows that. Everyone knows that. You see that from newscasters to podcast people. Everyone's talking about that. There's even an AIPAC tracker because people are so sick of AIPAC buying our politicians in the way that they do. So Marjorie Taylor Greene says, "I'm not being bought and paid for by AIPAC, but any foreign lobby. And just because this one is exempt from registering as a foreign lobby doesn't mean I'm going to allow them to buy me as well." And so she's actually standing up for her principles. And I think even people on the left can acknowledge that and like that. There is starting to be more and more politicians across the aisle that are rejecting AIPAC and their malicious policies of forcing legislation and manipulating our officials. People think we're a controlled state already, that we're controlled by Israel, and AIPAC is certainly having a heavy hand in that belief. So people want to reject AIPAC, all in all. And they say that she is not for America because AIPAC is for America. It's for American citizens. We're advocating for Americans. No, you're not. You're advocating for Israel. Your whole point is to use American money, quote unquote, if it's even really American money, to advocate for Israel and Israel's relationship with the U.S. And they say, oh, well, that's because a healthy Israel, a strong Israel benefits the United States. It's like not at the cost of the United States, not at the cost of the billions we send over there every year, not at the cost of the wars they make us start, not at the cost of the information that they gather from us illegally. All these different programs they have come up with to siphon American intelligence. That is not for the benefit of America. And people are realizing more and more that even if there was any benefit to being allies with Israel in the Middle East, which the arguments are they give us information about terrorist groups that they fund and start, and that too we have an ally in the region, a region we shouldn't be involved with in the first place. It's like those are their two best arguments. The complete detriment of them far outweighs those benefits. The controlled nature of our relationship with Israel, the amount of money we send them, our loyalty to them, the fact that all our laws are only approved when the congressmen and women, their AIPAC member says it's okay to vote for that bill. That's the only way it's allowed to get passed. That's what people are saying. We're done with this. We don't want this. And although I like Marjorie Taylor Greene to a certain degree, I don't want her to be president. People are saying, oh, she should run for president. No, I won't vote for her for president. I don't want her to be president. I'd rather have Thomas Massey than her. But I think at the moment, there's not even really that many candidates that are great, that are really standing out. But I think we will see that in the 2028 election, because I think we're going to go from last election, which was who loves Israel the most, to this next election will be who is willing to cut off the most from Israel. I think you're going to see a switch that drastic because people are sick of it, even on the right. And when they have J.D. Vance, a creature of Peter Thiel, who wants to implement a surveillance state, I think that's going to be a problem. I think people are not going to be in support of that. I think that any other Republican candidate that's run before. Nikki Haley is super pro-war. Vivek, although not necessarily super pro-AIPAC, he is super pro-foreigners. He wants to bring in millions and millions of H-1B workers to replace the lazy, dumb Americans, as he called us. Christie's not even a conservative. Trying to even think of who else ran. DeSantis is, he loves going to that wall and kissing it, making out with it more than his wife, probably. So there's not many candidates left who are even like functional, who would even be like functionally a good president. But I think over this next year, you're going to see them emerge after the midterms. You'll see people position themselves to run for president against Vance, because the things about Vance are coming out, the holes in his story and ideology, the fact that he's Catholic but his family isn't, that he intentionally married outside of his culture, that he changed his name 3 times, that he flipped on being a never Trumper and now being all in on Trump. And I think at the end of Trump's campaign, or at the end of Trump's term, he's going to stab him in the back and then be all, well, Trump never fulfilled his promises and I'm going to implement them. And the connections to Peter Thiel and how he was basically created to be this perfect politician. There's just so much like correlation and concern that I don't think we really want Vance. And although Marjorie Taylor Greene's okay, I think she is still a little wacky. I don't think I want her to be president. I think she's fine enough. I think she's good at actually speaking her mind. Now, that doesn't mean I agree with her mind all the time, but I think at least she is one of the politicians who can be transparent enough that she can say what she believes. And, they always make stories about her. Oh, she's breaking with party lines. It's like, no, she's just representing the American people. I want the Epstein list released. I don't want to give more money to Israel. She just says things that are common sense that people across both aisles seem to support. She's just not totally lockstep. And I think that's fine. I think that's a good thing. But that doesn't mean just because you're the one that is going against the grain does not mean that you would be the perfect person for the job. We may not have any other choice. I think Massey, again, would probably be better. But there's really not many people on the Republican side. We're going through this massive transition of, we had the Bush era, all the neocons, then you get Trump, then you bring in a bunch of these MAGA people. That's been a constant like churning over of new people. And then Trump is really not fulfilling most of his promises, the things that are going to matter, that would, probably win the Republicans an election in 2028. Trump says everything people want to hear and then doesn't follow through on it, which makes it worse because he's like hyping them up. He's like, I don't know, guys, maybe when I get home, we'll have a pizza party. We'll have pizza when I get home tonight. And, the dad gets home and then he's like, well, I said maybe. We're not having pizza. That's what Trump is. Trump's the guy who like hypes you up, is like, oh, well, maybe we'll do this. We should do this. We should really, really do this. Okay, now actually, never mind. And it makes it worse, right? Because then you're baited. You're baited into believing things will change. And so the young people actually want things to change. Trump keeps baiting them. And then they're going to want to turn to somebody who will actually make things change. And so I think you'll get more radical candidates. It's going to be a weird stage in 2027 on like the primary stage. It's going to be really weird because I think you're going to get like the neocons, the warhawks. They're going to rear their ugly heads as soon as Trump's out of the picture, because they want, to get away from this 10-year intermission they had from ruining the country. They couldn't have any power when Trump was sucking all the oxygen out of the room, but now they're going to take it back. They're going to try. So whoever that is, I don't know who they're going to run, Huckabee or, even DeSantis, again, huge AIPAC supporter, huge Israel supporter. He could be convinced to go to war in the Middle East. Nikki Haley, obviously huge war hawk. I don't really know who they have who would be like, none of them are good, but who would be their best option. But then you'll also have like radical far right people as well. I think you'll see more far right people join the stage, and it'll be like the biggest political split in the Republican Party probably ever on a debate stage. And I think that's where we're headed. And I think most people are going to go with the right. like the far right, because Trump will have edged them the whole time and done practically nothing. I mean, he's kind of making things not worse at the moment. Not really. He's kind of like slowly, stemming the bleeding. But fundamentally, he's not really following through on what he needs to do. He hasn't ended the wars. The economy's still like, eh. He hasn't really kicked out all the immigrants. He says he will. He hasn't really gone after the left in the way he should, because they're going to go after him if they get into power again. So he's never really followed through on any of these things, even the Epstein list stuff. Like, that's a huge thing that he never followed through on. Transparency in the government. That people trust the Trump administration's FBI even less than the Biden administration's. It's like nobody trusts any institution. Somehow they made that whole thing even worse. So I think you'll see somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene, very anti-AIPAC, very just pro-isolationist more and more, just anti-interacting with other people's problems and wars and funding all of the things in the world that we don't need to fund, funding several different countries' healthcare systems, even though we can't even afford ours. Things like that need to be solved. And I think Americans will go for the radical option, because even the mildly radical option, the Trump, who the left sees as like mega Hitler and the right sees as like, he's like, a very loose speaking Republican. He's boisterous. He's not, they don't really think he's that crazy or that innovative. But even that, like the dipping your toe into the radicalism, like it didn't work. It's all in. We got to go all in on the far right. It seems to be that's the direction the country's going to pull in. And if Trump does enough to secure Republican votes in the future, I think that would be good. I don't know if he will or not. I think I've said this before. I think he'll do everything in his power to maintain his legacy. And in doing so, it will doom his legacy because he'll do nothing effective. He's very concerned about what people think of him. He's very concerned about, what his base thinks of him. But at the same time, he also seems bought and paid for. Remember, he got $250 million from pro-Zionists. So he's in it. He's got to fulfill certain obligations. And I think he's being pulled in a bunch of different directions. And I think that's going to rip him apart. And I think the legacy will not last. And so we'll get somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene on that side of the aisle. You'll see more and more people emerge. You're already seeing more. I mean, young people doing podcasts and stuff like that. Not as many people who are of age to be president, but there are some. You'll see them position themselves. And I think any of them have a good chance of winning, because if Vance is tied to Trump, if Trump's, legacy goes down like the Titanic, Vance can either, get dragged down with it, say, I supported everything, I was with everything, or he can jump ship and stab Trump in the back. And then people probably still won't like him because nobody likes a rat. They may say, well, Vance is right that Trump didn't do any of these things. But at the same time, nobody likes a rat. Nobody likes someone who stabs their boss in the back. So I think Vance is kind of doomed either way, especially that's on top of all the suspicious behaviors and beliefs over the years. And so I don't know who we'll get, but I think I think that'll be the telltale sign of, do they support AIPAC or not? Do they take AIPAC money? Are they a pro-Zionist? That's going to be like the Americans, the right wing's benchmark of like, are you really America first, or are you saying, like Ben Shapiro, I'm as America first as it benefits Israel? That's those two ways Republicans. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. That's my thoughts on this. You made it all the way through the video. I appreciate it. If you like the content, like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And thank you for watching.